Hello.
Hey, hello, and welcome to another episode of Build on Open Source. This is a very special episode because we had an episode last Friday as well. So we're doing back to back this week because of an enforced gap we had the week before. So welcome to Build on Open Source. We usually come to you every 2 weeks, but we're a show that covers all the new and exciting updates from the open source community. Coming to you live from twitch.tv/AWS. And my name is Derek. I am a developer advocate in AWS. And I'm joined by my lovely friend, Ricardo. Ricardo,
Thank you, Derek. Hello, everyone. Yep. Yes, I'm Ricardo. I'm also a developer advocate, and I am streaming from another exotic location today. Last week, it was Dublin. This week, it's Manchester. And the sun is shining, so apologies if I'm coming across a little bit stripy. The sun is causing me all sorts of problems this morning, but delighted to be here for the third episode, and we've got a great show for everyone today.
Yeah, awesome. I'm actually home today. So last week I was in Thailand, this week Perth. But as we were saying, Rick, as you're in Manchester, the sun won't stay very long, and so
no, I always bring the sun with me.
You always bring the weather, and soon the sun will go. So that's where we are today. But what about the show itself, Rick? Do you want to give us a quick overview of what we expect today?
Yeah. So for people watching, for people who are just here for the first time, the show follows a similar format. We're going to kick off in a bit with a roundup of the latest open source news. So we'll go through the latest newsletter, which I'm putting together. It's going to be published on Monday, so you get to see it first before anyone else. So we'll do that for about sort of 15 minutes. Then we're going to bring in a special guest, and I'm really super excited about our special guest today. Do you want to mention who our special guest is, Derek?
Yeah, for sure. So today we're going to talk about cloudscape. I've got a fantastic guest, Gethin, who's going to come to us and talk to us about cloudscape. If you don't know what cloudscape is and you're a front-end UI developer, then where have you been? It's a new set of libraries that we've released, and Gethin's going to take us through all and tell us all about cloudscape, which is fantastic. We are live, so this show is even better if you interact with us in the chat. So if any questions about open source on AWS, or indeed the topic that we're talking about today, or any topic that Ricardo's about to go through when he does his news of the week, then please reach out and put in the chat, and we'll have a chat. We love a good chat, don't we, Rick?
We love a chat. And actually, before we go into the next segment, after Gethin, we're going to then do a quick competition time. We've got a challenge for you that might be Cloudscape related, so watch out for that. And then we're going to close up with just sharing links and resources and a few things that we want you to make sure you don't miss out, events and stuff from the newsletter as well. So I think that's what you can expect for the next hour. Really excited. There's lots of great stuff as always. So I think, and like Derek said, we want to hear from you. What are your favorite open source projects? What do you want us to cover? When, as we talk through the newsletter, or as Gethin comes on, share with us your questions. The demo that Gethin is going to share with us later on is going to be awesome. So get your best question heads on, and please interact with us.
Yep. So strap yourselves in. We're about to go to section 1, which is
yes, we are in the newsletter. We are in the newsletter. We are getting good at this, aren't we? Those transitions kill me every time. So I'm going to take you through the kind of latest open source news. I've been putting this together this week. It's going to get published Monday, so you are seeing this before anyone else. And just a reminder, at the end of the show, we are going to share a QR code link, which is a short survey we'd love you to respond to, and you'll get a link to this as well. So you'll get to access all this before anyone else. So let's look at the actual projects, okay? So this week, we've got another great selection of projects, some that I had not seen before, including Guardian. So Guardian, great name for a project. This is a node-based tool, a command line tool that you can actually easily run, and it does a quick check of your AWS environment. And it looks like it does a check against the well-architected pillar, because if you can see that, I'm not sure. Can you see the screen, Derek? Is it showing the demo?
when I first saw this, Rick, I was thinking ASCII art again. Is this another entry into the
Oh,
ASCII art Hall of Fame?
yeah. You know what? It could be. You know, I hadn't really clocked that, but you're right. ASCII art for the win again.
Oh,
yeah. Awesome. Awesome stuff.
We should have a show just on ASCII art. If you didn't see the first episode, check it out. Where you had quite an ASCII art project there as well.
We do. We need to speak to Darko because Darko obviously is the master of the ASCII art. And for those people who haven't heard of the LOL Banner tool, LOL Banner is a tool which you can you literally run with a parameter of text, and it creates beautiful multicolored ASCII text banners, and it's awesome. But anyway, we are digressing now.
We are.
but this tool looks interesting, right? And it's a really interesting way of doing a quick check of your environment. And if you read the docs, they show you how you can also embed it into your CI pipeline. So you can effectively, have this as a task that runs that can produce a report. So you can have an ongoing status of how your infrastructure is looking. So I think this is interesting. Definitely check this out. Nice work. I'm not sure how you say your name. Is it Eloy? I think it's Eloy Allen, but I might be wrong. Please forgive me if I got it wrong. Tell me, is it Eloy?
Yeah, because there is this fantastic game called Horizon Forbidden West, Horizon Zero Dawn on the PlayStation, and the main protagonist there is Eloy, and I think it's spelled the same way, so that's why I'm pretty confident it's Eloy.
Okay, I did not know that. I'm not a big gamer, Derek, so apologies for not knowing that. Okay. Actually, if I do game, it's retro games, not modern games, because the problem is I just lose myself. So I don't know where to begin. I like the simple ones, left, right, fire. That's it. Okay, so next project. We've got the Kong AWS request sign. Now, for those people who aren't familiar with Kong, Kong is an open source API gateway type tool. Super kind of like super popular in the cloud native world. And so it's got a plugin architecture, so you can plug in new features and functionality. And this one, I think this one's actually been done by Lego. Actually, I think I've got it somewhere here.
Really?
Where is it? Yes, because obviously Lego are big on serverless and AWS, and so here is it's from Lego. So I was right.
Nice.
Wow. So this actually allows you to support SIG v4 signing and temporal credentials. So if you're using Kong and AWS, this could be a useful tool for you. And thank you, Lego, for putting that together and sharing it. Now this one, I kind of like this one from Guillaume. I think it's French, maybe. But CDK scheduler. So what is CDK scheduler? I can hear Derek thinking and asking.
I did. I actually had a look at this. So I read the blog this morning, and this looked very interesting
cool, isn't it?
Indeed.
This is cool. So if you ever had the need, right, to schedule or do schedule your serverless functions, but you wanted to do that via CDK, now you have a construct that makes it easy to do, right? So very nice documentation, very simple to follow. Very nice project that's going to help people do that. And I actually use this myself. I have a little Lambda function that I schedule. I think it's every hour, and what it does is it accesses GitHub and then pulls down all my stats, and allows me to then use CloudWatch Insights to generate dashboards of like activity on my GitHub repos. But I had to do that manually. I had to configure it manually, and now I've got a way of doing that through CDK, which, as people know, I love CDK, so I'm definitely going to be trying this out. So
everybody should love CDK. I think every episode we say the same mantra: everybody should love CDK.
We do, and also actually, as moving on to the next segue on to the next thing, which is Terraform IAM policy. So I'm learning Terraform, okay, and I do like Terraform as well. Now this is an IAM policy script in Python. So what it does, it allows you to actually validate your the Python script that gets created when you do your Terraform plan. And I think I've got it somewhere here, actually. Where is it? Here it is, yeah. So it's an AWS Labs project. You run it as a normal Python script, and the documentation tells you how you can run it, and then it generates, output like that. So could be very useful if you're using Terraform. Because I'm still learning, I plan to experiment with this and see for it to tell me how bad my Terraform scripts are. But I like that, right? Because it'll help me improve my Terraform script. So very useful, I think. Feedback is always good. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. The next open source tool, again from AWS, is the zone-aware controller for Kubernetes. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to make your Kubernetes controllers AWS availability zone aware. And this is important. So as Kubernetes is doing its rollouts, it knows and can minimize any disruption. So that's useful. The documentation goes into lots of detail. Now I'm still getting my head around Kubernetes, so I think this is still too complex for me, for my knowledge. But I think this is an interesting project for those people who are doing a lot of work in Kubernetes. What I'm not sure though, Derek, is I'm not sure how this complements or is different to something like Carpenter, so which is the autoscaler. So I'm not quite sure whether it works with Carpenter or works as a different thing. So if people know, again, please ask, tell us either in the comments or if you've got questions on any of these projects I'm sharing. We'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these projects.
Yeah.
Next tool is SQL Server tools. So this is interesting for people who are migrating. Maybe you've got some SQL servers, and as was often the case, those secret SQL servers that were hidden under desks. That's a difficult sentence to say. Secret SQL servers. Yeah, that's a tongue twister. I heard one. This script will actually allow you to scan your network and then detect those. And that's useful, obviously, if you want to migrate them to something like RDS. So, or even if you want to use something like DMS to move them to an open source a database, which we love. We love converting SQL Server databases to open source databases, or even using something like Babelfish for Postgres. I know you've got a lot of love for .NET and that stuff. So I hope I haven't upset you there, Derek.
I do. I'm just also I'm going to stop you there for a minute, Rick, because we've got a few people joining asking, "What's this all about? What is this show?"
What is it? What are we talking about, Derek?
Can we get a link to this blog? So this is the BuildOn Open Source show. A lot of S's today. And today we're actually, if you haven't seen the show before, we go through Ricardo's blog, which you're seeing at the minute, which he will release after the show. And what we do, we talk through all of the projects and highlights in the open source world over the last week and a bit. So after the show, we'll give you the link to the blog. You can go and read it at your leisure. But we're just highlighting it before it gets released.
Yeah,
hope that makes sense to everybody.
It does. And also, you can check out the actual blog for all the previous newsletters as well. We're up to 128 now. So, if you want to dive deep into the open source backlog, then, there's plenty of great content. And the stuff here that we're sharing as well is all new stuff, right? It's not old stuff, it's new stuff that's been released in the last week or so. And typically we do the show every 2 weeks.
We do.
So yeah, good question. So thank you for that question.
We like it. Thank you.
Yes. Any more questions, Derek, before I carry on?
There was cool. We got that's really it. Just questioning what's going on here. Who are these people?
What's going on?
What is that blog?
Indeed.
I want that blog. Yep. Cool.
Okay, right. So I'm just going to wrap up now before we can move on to the next into the next segment. So just to find a few projects and then some blog posts and events that I want to talk about. So this, the way I structure it in the newsletter is I have kind of tools first, and then I have demo samples. I sometimes get asked, why do you share these? Because they're very AWS specific, and the reason why I share them is because open source has this concept of 4 freedoms. The freedom to study, copy, modify, and edit. And you can learn a lot by checking out the source code from these projects. If you're an AWS user, they're super valuable. They can help you either bootstrap a project, they can help you start as a baseline. And so that's the reason why. And so in this section, we share examples of what I think are interesting projects that people might find helpful as they start doing this themselves. And the first one is the CDK Golden AMI pipeline. So I have actually built something like this in the past, whereby you have a GitHub repository and a pipeline that uses effectively Image Builder to create AMIs that you can then use in your EC2 instances. So this actually has everything you need. So this would have saved me a ton of time if I'd had it. But great. So this is really, if you want to automate and streamline how you build your own images, take a look at this project.
Cool.
I think the only thing I think I probably didn't see in this project actually, which maybe people might want to take a look at, is graviton support. When I did this, I had two pipelines. I had an x86 pipeline and a graviton pipeline, so that I could build, multi-architecture images. But I haven't checked it, so I haven't tried it. So maybe it does do that, but I haven't tried it. The next project is the EKS Argo rollout. So Argo is a CNCF project, I think, that helps you do progressive delivery. So for those people who don't know what progressive delivery, and I'm quite new to this is, and Derek, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here. This is how you can automate the gradual release of new features into production using techniques such as blue-green, canary deployments, and all this kind of stuff. Very gradual, phased out rollouts. And Argo is really good at doing that, apparently. And so if you want to do that, then here is a sample project for you to try out and see if it works for you.
Yeah, we should almost have a show dedicated to Kubernetes one week.
Well, I tell you what, if you don't know, if people watching don't know this, there is a show called Containers from the Couch that runs, I think it's on Fridays or Thursdays, and the containers team at AWS, they take a look at Kubernetes, ECS, ECS Anywhere, EKS Anywhere, and anything to do with Kubernetes. So I definitely would recommend you check that show out because it's brilliant. There's a great cast of. We'll have to share that link in the show notes.
Yeah.
The last project this week is AI powered text insight. So this is a complete sample that allows you to effectively build a sentiment analysis stroke sort of solution to get insights from your social media, so Twitter, for example, and it creates a dashboard for which you can actually do this. And I'm very happy that it uses Hugging Face. We can see the little Hugging Face logo here. We love Hugging Face. Julian Simon, we are not worthy. One of our colleagues. He is now the chief evangelist there. Great guy and doing some amazing stuff with the Hugging Face. So if you want to get more insights out of your social media, then why not try this project, and let us know how you get on with it. For people listening, if you try these projects, we'd love to hear your feedback. Were they good? Did they do what you wanted? Did you do anything interesting with them? We'd love to hear from you. So that's a roundup of the projects.
Awesome. I'm
going to very quickly cover a couple of blog posts that I think are essential viewing this week. The first one is this one. The Kyverno and cosine. So within open source, you may hear lots of talk about the supply chain security. And so there are a number of emerging technologies and projects, including Sigstore, and cosine is part of that. And so this project talks about how you can embed that within your EKS environment. So definitely worth checking out this because it's a really good primer, talks about some of the basic concepts, and actually then is hands-on so you can actually build something. So definitely check out this post. And so that's all I want to cover for this week. There's lots of other stuff in there. At the end of the show, we're going to wrap up with some of the events that we want you to be aware of. But I think, Derek, we're now ready on for the next
we are
segment.
I'm doing multitasking here, Rick. So let's go to our next section. And people are asking, do we have VODs from the last show? So I'll post that in the comments shortly when our guest is speaking. So let's.
Before we do the transition, what is the next session? What's happening next?
Oh, so next we're going to have Gethin come and join us from Cloudscape and talk to us about all things UI. So let's jump into the next section. I'm doing it. Yes.
That's my fault. That's my fault. We're so keen. I was so keen to press the button. I like pressing buttons, Eric, so apologies. I will...
Yes, leave it alone, Rick. Do not press the button. I said I was doing it.
I know you did. I know you said you were doing it, and I did not listen, so apologies.
Awesome. So this is the next section. This is our we'd be very, very lucky because we've had a guest of the week for the 2 weeks that are running now. So this week we've got Gethin He's going to talk to us about all things UI and the new framework that we've released. So, but rather than me describe it, Gethin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Derek. So yeah, hi, I'm Gethin. I am part of the team here at AWS and working on a project that we've recently open sourced called Cloudscape, or Cloudscape Design System, to give it its full title. So it's a project that we've been working within AWS for a long time now, longer than I've been here, in fact. But just a couple of months ago, we open sourced it. So the full kind of design system, right from the fundamentals up to the components and through to the big kind of patterns and flows, is now fully open source. You can use the same design guidelines, same components that we use internally to build the AWS Management Console to now build your own applications.
Nice.
So
before we get into it, though, again, I'm kind of keen to know a little bit more about you and open source, and what's your kind of like, how did you get into open source, and can you share with people what your favorite open source technology or project is?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I've always worked on the front end, and front end has pretty much always been open source, I think, or the tech that we use. So when I started out, it was a load of jQuery. That was like the big thing that suddenly made it easy to do front end.
I mean, everyone starts with jQuery, actually. Yeah, in fact, people listening, if you've got your own jQuery experiences, we'd love to hear them. So put them in the comments so that we can see.
I had hair before I started using jQuery.
Too. I had hair as well. Is that a pattern, maybe? Are we saying that anyone who uses jQuery loses their hair? That's quite controversial.
So yeah, there was that, and then I think my first contributions were to Ember.js, which was a sort of JS that came along and did things a bit better, a bit more structured, and then very quickly I moved on to React from there. In fact, React Native first of all, because I was doing a lot of mobile apps, and suddenly that was way easier than Derek. You were mentioning Xamarin a bit earlier when we were behind the scenes. I'm definitely in the React Native camp there, but and then since then I've moved much back into the web side of things and building lots with React. That's kind of I was going to say that's the open source project I use most, but now probably Cloudscape is the open source project.
Of course.
Yeah, that's kind of my background, and yeah.
And what about your favorite project? What's your favorite project? Be honest. And I know obviously Cloudscape's going to be in there, right? It's going to be in the top 2, right? But outside of Cloudscape, what's your favorite project?
I mean, I think React has changed the way that we do front end, and I've got a huge amount of respect for that. There's some new things coming out, like there's the Vite project, and Vite testing as well is sort of changing a bit the way you do front end testing. That's really exciting to see. In terms of things that have made me more productive, I'm going to jump on the CDK bandwagon as well, because like it's just so much easier than formation YAML files.
Big up CDK.
Have you played with Flutter at all, Gethin? That's my favorite.
No, it's sort of on my big long list, but I haven't had much hands on yet.
Yep.
So, Gethin, so before we kind of like dive into kind of more about Cloudscape, when I talk to open source builders, a lot of open source projects, they start off as a scratching an itch, solving a problem. So do you want to start off with like, what was the problem that you were trying to solve with Cloudscape?
Yeah, so we kind of go back maybe 5-6 years to when AWS was not quite as big. There were still a lot of services, and there were enough services that the management console became really hard to use. Each service looked a bit different. It worked a bit differently. As a customer, you didn't know how to do things really there. And so we started to kind of look and say, how can we solve this? How can we make things more consistent? And also, how can we make it easier for teams to build their management consoles, to build the UI for managing your S3 buckets, your EC2 instances? Because a lot of that is the same. You know, you're building tables, you're building create views. There's a lot of things that should be consistent, that should be really easy to do. So we started, looking what different UI flows are different teams using, what components have they built, and seeing how we could begin to centralize that. And we worked on that. We got teams adopting that. We got their feedback. We iterated. We rebuilt. We refactored. We spent a couple of years, getting that to the point where we were happy with what it was doing, when it was actually really helping teams to build more quickly. It was helping the AWS management console as a whole to scale more quickly. Each year we get more and more AWS services, and keeping up with that scale has been one of the really exciting things. And then we thought, this isn't just useful for us. There are other people out there who are building similar things. Kind of at the core of the management, or at the core of Cloudscape, we have this idea of resource management, which for AWS means AWS resources, obviously, but they're not that much different than like physical devices, say, or even things like customers in our CRM system. They're all resources. You want to view lists of them. You want to find individual ones. You want to carry out some actions. A lot of these flows are very similar. So we thought, let's open source this. Let's give this design system to the public, see what they can build with it. And
nice.
So you're thinking from the very start around performance and optimization. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, both from a kind of technical and a sort of organizational point of view. So, if we can help the UX designers to not have to go and research how they build certain flows, and we can do that research once and say, this is the best way to build a resource list table. And then that kind of speeds up that process, and we can also optimize that table from a technical point of view to make sure that it's fast, it's accessible, the UX is great, etc., etc. So looking at both sides of that and how to optimize that.
Very cool.
Nice.
Time for demos? So we jump into demos?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. So before we dive into the demo, which obviously everyone, including me, talk a little bit about what you're going to show us.
Yeah, so I'm going to dive into a bit of code. So I'm going to dive into a quick kind of snapshot, first of all, of what you can do with some basic components. This is the website. I'll skip away from that for a second and go to this code sandbox. So I've basically got just like a web-based IDE here showing a really basic front-end app. You can see here I've pulled in some Cloudscape dependencies. So I've got the components and the global styles, and then just some standard React dependencies. I'm gonna.
So Gethin, before we dive in,
what IDE is this?
Yes,
tell us what this is.
So this is a really nice kind of web project called Code Sandbox. It just lets you do front end in the browser, basically. So I don't have to have VS Code running. I can just do this here, and then I can really easily share these links with other people, collaborate on things, set up templates. It's just a nice way of like trying things out, doing these sorts of demos, and having it really easily shareable.
Cool.
Awesome.
And
people,
well. Nice.
People listening, watching, if you've got any questions as Gethin is doing his demo, please put your comments in, and we'll share them with Gethin.
Cool. So diving into the code a little bit here, and you can see the code and the preview kind of here side by side. Basically, I'm importing a few of our Cloudscape components here, and then building them together into a really basic app. So at the top level, we've got an app layout. Here, this isn't actually doing very much. It's a bit more powerful than we need for this demo. You can see I've kind of turned off these tools and navigation. I can take that out, and you can see then you've got kind of these placeholder containers for a side nav and a kind of other side info panel. I'm going to hide those for now because they're not so important. And then we've got the main content layout where we start to build the page itself. So again, this is where we're kind of more, we're a design system rather than just a component library. So we're kind of opinionated about how you should build a page. And these types of layout components, the app layout and the content layout, help to make it really easy to build in a consistent way. So this content layout is what's providing this kind of header with this overlap in that we sort of think works well in terms of information architecture for a page. So we've got, within the content layout, we've got a header. The header is kind of this bit up here with the title and a bit of a description underneath. Nothing too exciting there. And then into the main content of the content layout. There's lots of content here. We've got a container. So this kind of slightly set out thing with a drop shadow on it. And then inside that, a form field and a button, nothing too fancy. So this is just like a really, really simple demo of how you can start to put together the components. And where I want to go from there is then think, we want to actually build an application. I was talking before about resource management, and a table listing out your resources is a really key part of that. So I'm going to skip over to the docs website and go into the components and find our table components to see how we would start building with that. So I'm going to find it in the side nav here. And you can see here, this is our kind of landing page for the documentation for this component. We've got this configurator on the left-hand side with a whole load of different predefined examples. So you can sort of skip through that and see the preview updating. And then you can actually dive into the kind of low-level API of the component and actually play around with all the different properties here. I'm not going to go into that in too much depth now, but it's a really nice way to play around and see what the possibilities are with all of our components, see how you can configure them for different use cases.
So, Gethin, can I ask a question? So, because maybe I'm the one person who's not a front end here. So, I know Derek and yourself are experienced. So, what you've shown so far is kind of like the kind of the UI stuff. Okay, how do you plug in kind of like the actual stuff that you want to put into it? So the data and the back end. How is that what you've just shown us now? Is this how you configure it, or is that done in a separate way?
So actually, it's a good question.
Forgive me if that's a basic question, but maybe some other people who aren't maybe front end people might want to know how you actually, if I've got, for example, a Dynamo table, how do I bring that into this?
Yeah. The answer is not as exciting as you might think. Unfortunately, it's kind of up to you. So, okay. We provide the kind of pure front end. So how you get your data, how you fetch that is up to you, and what sort of back end you're using, what scale of data you're working with. So do you want to try and load all of your data, or do you want to paginate it? It's kind of up to you to figure that out for your application.
Okay, good to know.
What we do try to provide is components that are as flexible as possible. So this table, for example, you can see we've got quite a lot of different features here. We've got some filtering here. We've got some pagination. You can sort the different columns, and this is quite flexible in that you can do that sorting. You can offload that to your backend and do that all there if that works better from a performance point of view. Or we also provide a package called, I've forgotten its name, collection hooks that does all of that in the front end. So you can dump all of your data from your DynamoDB table into the collection hooks, and it will magically do all of the filtering and sorting and everything and pagination for you. So it sort of scales to different scales of projects.
Cool.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically take a couple of bits and pieces, the key bits of the table, which are two things: the column definitions, so what columns you want to appear within your table, and then the actual items, so your data. And here I'm just going to use some hard-coded like JSON basically as the data source. So I'm going to copy this over to my code sandbox. I'm just going to put this in here. So this is definitions. And then I'm going to grab the items as well.
Live coding.
Live coding.
Yeah, it's instant -10 for IQ.
And then I'm just going to set up a bit of spacing here. So as well as the actual like really exciting components that like the table that do things, we also have, I've got these all the wrong way around. Yeah, live coding. There we go.
Yeah.
We also have like these layout components that just help to like space things out on the page, do a bit of typography, maybe do those kind of small things that maybe you might use CSS for. You can also use CSS. We provide design tokens that you can use in your CSS to do colors, spacing, those sorts of things. But you can also do it in a pure JavaScript way. It depends how you prefer to work with it.
Yeah, I was going to ask that about that. How, you know, the relationship of this with you know, if you've got your own custom style sheets, your own kind of branding, color schemes, all that kind of, you can basically integrate that into it easily. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, what we also have is a theming capability. So you can actually kind of override some of our design tokens, the sort of the foundation of the components, and say, right, instead of blue buttons, I want red buttons because that's my brand color, and I want that. And you can override fonts, you can override, not absolutely everything, but bits and pieces here and there to provide that customized experience for your customers.
I'll be testing the documentation because as you've been talking about specific components, I've been trying to find them, and there's theming.
There's theming, absolutely.
Excellent.
I'm glad that our search functionality is working well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to the table. I'm going to start to create that, and then you can see as I'm typing, these are all TypeScript components. So they have type definitions and inline documentation. So you can see here the editor is able to pick that up and see what properties this component has available. So I want to add these column definitions, and I called that definitions earlier, and then my items. And we should, at that point, then see the table appearing.
Oh, magic, yeah.
We've got those same columns that we had over in the docs website, and these items showing up. So that's kind of the very basic demo of how to get things onto a page, how to start playing around with them. As Ricardo was saying earlier, seeing how it's been done before is often a really good way to get started, to get deeper into a project. And so for that, we have what we call the demos. Pretty obvious name there, really. These are
imagination running wild.
Yeah, I know. These are some pre-built pages that show lots of the different components and also a lot of the different higher level flow, what we call patterns or flows of the design system. So it's, again, not just those individual components, but being a bit more opinionated about how you put them together to make a meaningful experience for your customers. So we can see, for example, we can go down and find a table. And we might dive into this property filter because that's a bit more of a kind of fancy table. So you've got here, you can see, because it's a full demo, you've got the full page. So we've got these panels that we were talking about earlier with some actual kind of meaningful content in them. So some navigation on the left, some help content on the right, and then the actual table itself here. And you can see we've got these different controls that we saw earlier. They actually work now in this full demo. So you can paginate through and see different pages of data. You can sort things. That's the S word that I'm looking for in your table. And you can also use this search here. And this is a kind of more complex type of search. So you can actually kind of look through the different properties in the table. Say we want all of our kind of price class here, which doesn't seem to be quite matching up to the data I'd expect, but you get the idea. You can go through, you can create these different types of criteria. So if we just want all of our pending deployments, you can do that. You can switch this between and or. So you can build up these kind of complex search queries here to search through the data and find what you want. And then you want to actually see what's going on. Kind of spoiler alert, in a day or two, there will be a source code button up here on the top right. It's not quite been deployed yet, unfortunately.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask that question. So perfect timing.
This is kind of hot off the press. And what you can do is from this demos page, we have the link to our source code. So you can see the source code for all these demos in GitHub. We've got some instructions here on how to get started building this, and you can kind of dive in. So we can dive into the source here, into pages, and then we were looking at the table, and you can find then table property filter was the one we were looking at. And you can see how that is built, how that's all put together, and copy this across into your own project, use that as a starting point. This is, as with all examples in Amazon, pretty much, this is MIT 0 license, so you can basically do whatever you want with this. It's a starting point for you to do what you want.
It's great stuff.
Nice.
And the demos that, so if you go back to the demos, right? How many demos do we currently have? Is it 27 demos I can see.
Yeah.
Okay, and they cover the typical kind of use cases, I guess, that you would typically apply cloudscape to.
Yeah, exactly. So they're pretty much a one-to-one mapping with these patterns. So these are kind of all the different types of pages or features within pages that we think are a good starting point. It won't solve every single problem that you've got in your front end, but it provides you with like the 80% that are common patterns, and then you can build on top of that.
Would you take contributions from the community for new demos or patterns?
We would. I think patterns are a pretty high level, and I think there'd be a lot of conversation with us as a design system in terms of actually contributing a new pattern. More at the component and component feature level, that's absolutely something that we want to do. And the demos as well, if you see things in our demos that you think are a bit strange and you want to improve, then absolutely go ahead, create a pull request for us, and we'll take a look at that.
Awesome. So can I ask a question, Gethin? So what are the long-term goals of Cloudscape? Where do you see this project heading?
Yeah, so we kind of want to see to an extent what you all want to do with it. So we want to see what types of things people want to build, how far you can take this. One of the reasons that we wanted to open source it is to kind of help those customers on AWS who want to do things a bit custom and do things a bit different for their use cases to do that, but to do it in a way that then matches the UI of AWS itself, so that you're using things that are familiar. So that's one of our goals, to kind of help people build on top of AWS more efficiently. The community side and really kind of using the community to grow the design system is definitely a big part as well. We're really excited to see how that will work out. We've kind of seen that a bit internally. There's loads of teams outside of AWS, but inside Amazon who use the design system as well. So we've kind of built that community internally. We want to kind of apply that externally as well, and really build that vibrant community of support and contribution, and see where that goes.
Yeah, and would you have any advice? You went through the open source journey recently. Would you have any advice for people who are thinking of doing the same?
Yeah, I think kind of just go for it. It's I think once you've got something that you're happy with, that's where you want to start. Get something that works for you or for some other teams that you work with. And if it works for you, it probably works for the community as well. And so at that point, just go for it, open source it, see what sorts of feedback you get from your customers and from the community, what contributions, what feature requests, and just take it from there. I would say also think about naming. Like early on, we struggled with naming. Finding a good name, and certainly finding a good name for a design system. There's a whole load of design systems out there, and finding the right name that then you can get a GitHub repo with that name, and in the front end world you can get an npm package with that name, a domain name. It's a bit of a challenge, so think about that as well.
Yeah, that's a good shout. We've actually got a question. So, you know, from your perspective, okay, what do you think? You mentioned React already, okay, but maybe that's not the same. But what are there, in your opinion, anything that's similar to Cloudscape? You know, in terms of what you're trying to achieve? Yeah,
there's definitely a few. So just to 100% clarify, Cloudscape itself is open source. So it's built by AWS, but is open source. So you can use it freely. The kind of the alternatives out there, I guess Material is the biggest one. So that provides a lot of very similar things, maybe with a slightly different focus, a bit more kind of on mobile first and slightly different use cases, but it has a lot of similar things. Carbon from IBM as well is a similar type of product. Again, an open source one. So those are I guess the two biggest similar open source projects.
I don't think I've heard of Carbon before, actually. Yeah. So that's a new one for me.
Obviously, both of those you can also, like Material, you can use on mobile devices. Can you do the same here?
You can. It's something we know that we need to improve. It's so the components are generally responsive and will work down to mobile sizes. Some of the interactions aren't optimized for mobile in the way that we would like them to be. So it's something that we hope to work on. You can use them. It depends a bit on the complexity of the components as well. A lot of the more simple components will work absolutely fine on mobile, and you can build interfaces with them. Some of the more complex ones, like tables on mobile, are always a bit of a kind of shouldn't I really? Is there maybe a better way of solving this problem?
So actually, I was going to ask, actually, and maybe you've touched upon it then, you know, with a lot of open source projects, when I speak to the founders or the maintainers, I ask them a question, what was the kind of the toughest engineering challenge they had to, you know, solve or crack for their project? So I'm going to ask you, you know, in this project, what so far has been the toughest engineering challenge in the project?
Yeah, there's a few. I think we talked a bit earlier about performance, ensuring performance, especially in things like really complex tables where you've got like potentially hundreds or thousands of rows and loads of columns all showing different fancy things. That's been a bit of a challenge. I think there's also some kind of operational type challenges. So we started building this inside Amazon, and that's a bit of a different world than building on GitHub. So now we do all of our development directly on GitHub. So all of our new features come in through GitHub PRs, and making that shift has been really interesting, getting to grips with all of the APIs that GitHub offers and how to integrate that into CI/CD. That's been really fun. And then still, however, thinking that we still have internal customers in Amazon as well. So we still need to provide it in the ways that they want for their internal tech stacks. So bridging that gap between Amazon and GitHub has been a challenge, but also really fun at the same time, getting to grips with what GitHub offers.
Yeah, so cool. We had a question last week around how do you build your CI/CD for your project, which was really interesting. So I'll ask the same question. What is the CI/CD orchestration mechanism that you're using for this?
Yeah, so we start off in GitHub. So we have a whole load of, like, when you create a PR, it will run a whole load of tests in GitHub. And in fact, we have within the kind of Cloudscape design ecosystem, we have, I don't even know how many, 13 repositories. So the kind of code base is split up a little bit. And when you create a CR or PR just on one of those, it will actually pull in all of those different repos and build them all together to check that something you're changing in one doesn't break something in another. So that was a pretty big technical challenge as well to get that all orchestrated. So that's where it starts, just checking that a PR is actually not breaking things. And then from there, we have some webhooks set up from GitHub that then kind of notify our internal systems that there's a new commit ready. We then pull it in. We do a whole load more testing. So in the front end, that testing is a load of screenshot testing, a load of cross-browser testing, making sure that changes don't have unexpected side effects. Changing a button color somewhere doesn't change a color somewhere else that you didn't want. So we have loads of testing set up for that, and then it gets published. It gets published then to NPM so that you can consume that package as an end consumer.
Interesting.
Awesome.
I mean that whole testing of what the user sees is super interesting, right? So, are you using something like Phantom or something else to do that?
We're using mostly Puppeteer. So we use, as much as we can, we use real browsers, so real instances of Chrome and Firefox and Safari are the main browsers we test with, so that we can actually test what real users will be seeing.
Okay, and we've got a question from Bong Beers, and we're assuming that all the testing is automated.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a fully automated CI pipeline. It takes a while to run, but you merge a PR in GitHub, and a certain number of hours later, it will end up in NPM without any more input, unless of course something does go wrong. So the screenshot testing, obviously, if you want to change something, the screenshot testing doesn't know the difference between a change that you wanted to make and a change that you didn't want to make. So there's still a kind of manual approval process there, but in general, it's as automated as it can be.
Nice. Well, that was a very awesome walkthrough, Gethin. Thank you very much for that. And I think, Derek, we are ready for the competition.
It is. Let's go.
Yeah, so we just heard from Gethin about Cloudscape, and so this week's challenge is to see what you viewers or folks coming from watching the replay can do with Cloudscape. So we'd love to see a demo that you put together, or maybe writing a blog post. Please, share with us what you've got, and we've got a prize. We've got one of these lovely open source coins, challenge coins. I gave a couple of these away yesterday at the ComSum community group. They are very gratefully received. These are very prized gifts.
I haven't got one.
You haven't got one? Oh my God.
No, they're that prized. I haven't got one.
They're very exclusive. They're very exclusive. And so how, I can hear you all saying, okay, we want to do something. How do we share? So 2 ways you can do this. Either create something and share with the Twitter handle at BuildOn Open, or in the GitHub repo, which we'll be sharing. You can raise an issue and share links with either the demo that you've created or blog post. And we'll run these by with Gethin, and we'll have a little rumination and see which ones we like. And for the ones we think are excellent, we'll share them in this newsletter, and we'll send one of these to you. So that's this week's or this episode's challenge of the week.
Good luck, everybody. We're looking forward to seeing all the designs and tables for mobiles. Not.
So as we wrap up, there's a couple of things that we want to sort of cover. I'm just going to basically bring up the newsletter again very quickly, and we have a section in the newsletter which is events, and obviously events are time bound, so we want to make sure that you don't miss anything. If I can scroll up, so where are they? Okay, so there are a couple of events that you might not be aware of, but check them out. So coming up next week, we've got the AWS Java Panelists, an online event. So if you love Java, then this is something you definitely need to check out, because the lineup of speakers is fantastic, and they're covering some really interesting topics around Java 17, 19, GraalVM, Power Tools for Java, and lots of more. So check out the registration page for the full detail, and sign up if you've got time. For our American colleagues, we've got ApacheCon. Although I have just heard that actually might be sold out, so you might go on a waiting list. But again, it's an awesome event if you can make it. We've then got on October 5th, Jumpstart Your Java Application. A bit of a Java theme in the events actually this week, isn't there? So we've had .NET, and now it's Java's turn, Derek. So
it's only fair, Rick. It's only fair.
It's only fair, isn't it? You know, I'm actually more Java than .NET, so you know I have a lot of love for Java. So there's an event here on October 5th, which is an in-person event. I think it's in London, actually, this one, where you can figure out how you can use the Micronaut open source framework with Java on Lambda. And then we've got coming up, not next week, but the week after, the next episode 4 of Build on Open Source. Now, Derek, sadly, I don't believe you're going to be with us on that episode, are you?
Oh, I've been taking some leave and traveling down the southwest corner of the magnificent state of Western Australia. So I won't be here.
You're very well deserved. Very well deserved, I think.
Thank you. There may be some wine involved. That's too much information. Yes,
as
so
long
we
as
might have
stay away from the keyboard.
Yes, we have to. We might have a substitute special guest.
We do.
Co-host.
We do have a substitute. We have. Unfortunately, he hasn't read the memo about the hairstyle. So So we might have to do something about that. But we do have another special guest on the 7th. So AWS Data Hero Alvaro Hernandez, awesome speaker who's going to talk about all things database on containers. And then the final event to check out is the present and future of infrastructure as code. AWS Hero Anton Babenko. He's going to be hosting this event. It's sponsored by Quevery. Quevery, for those people who aren't aware, do some really awesome stuff in open source. I've featured their projects on this newsletter. RepliByte is one of them, but Quevery itself is open source, and it's really geared for developers, and it's kind of mooted as kind of the easiest way to deploy applications on AWS. It's really, really good stuff. Definitely check out Quevery if you haven't already heard them. And if you want to know more about the future and present of infrastructure as code, check out the meetup and learn lots. So that's kind of like a roundup of events for your diary. Again, you know, you can check these on the newsletter when we publish it next week, or if you want, then just to finish up before we close, please, we thrive on feedback at Amazon. We work backwards from the customer. Yes, please. And that includes this show, the newsletter. It's a very short survey. It will take you about all of 30 seconds to complete. And you will get an early copy of the newsletter. No one else will have it until Monday. So if you want to explore the projects and the content that we've shared today, then this is the way you can access it. So please, if you've got 30 seconds spare, give us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing in the show. Let us know how we can improve the work we do in open source. And we'd really appreciate to hear more about you. So I think, Derek, that's all I wanted to cover. I think we're done. Gethin, I just want to thank you again for your demo today and talking about Cloudscape. It's been really awesome. Do you have any last words that you want to share with us?
Are you scarred? Did you get through the episode?
No, it was great fun. It was great speaking with you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the community can build. So the challenge.
Yeah, me too.
Excellent.
Me too.
Awesome. Alrighty, well, that's it for another week. I won't catch you next time, but Rick will, and I'll see you. We'll see you again in 2 weeks for our next episode of Build on Open Source. Bye, everybody.
See you later.